Have you been going around the internet looking for the ultimate baseball podcast? Well, you've just found it. On the Dugout Report, we'll cover not only the latest news from across Major League Baseball, but we'll also analyze and break down the hottest games, players, stats, and takes from every aspect of the game, including from on the field, in the dugout and clubhouse, from the front office, and so much more. As longtime White Sox broadcaster Ken the Hawk Harrelson would say, sit back, relax, and strap it down. This is the Dugout Report podcast with Andrew Caruso. Hello everyone, and a very happy Sunday to you, wherever you may be. This is episode 1 of the Dugout Report on this beautiful Sunday, November 28th, 2021. I'm your host, Andrew Caruso. I hope all of you are having a great day. I hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving, spending time with family, eating some great food, watching football, and doing other Thanksgiving traditions. I know I'm going to have a great Thanksgiving, and I'm actually recording this podcast on November 21st, 2021, which is a week before this episode is theoretically going to be released. I don't know when it's going to be released, but it's a week before my target date for release. So I'm doing it today, so I don't have to worry about it next week or during this week when my family is here. I want to be able to spend time with them and not have this podcast be a burden on my mind. So, I'm recording this on the 21st. After months and months of planning and discussing, the release date for our first episode is finally here. Words cannot express how excited I am to start producing this show for you all. I hope as time goes by, and as I produce more content, I hope this show will gain a following, which will help contribute to the wonderful online community made up of baseball fans like you and me. Since this is one of the newest podcasts, that's wishful thinking for now, but it'll happen eventually. Now, since this is the first episode, this will be a shorter introductory episode, so you folks can learn a bit about my baseball backstory and get to know me better and how I ended up here, producing this podcast for our community. We'll also cover the release schedule, the types of episodes, episode length and format, and how you can get involved. We'll also answer some questions that were sent in by listeners like you. But before I get into all that, I'd like to thank a few people who made this moment possible. But even before I get into that, you're probably wondering where you can find me, and where you can find and listen to the show. As a side note, this show is not sponsored in any way, shape, or form, by the companies and platforms I'm about to mention. I'm just acknowledging them because this information may be useful for some of you who may want to start your own podcast someday. This podcast was recorded using Soundtrap and is hosted by Anchor. You can find the show on the following platforms, including YouTube and Apple Podcasts, plus maybe SoundCloud. So this list is limited for now, but as time goes by, I'm hoping to expand the show to be available on more platforms. As for social media, you can follow the show on Twitter at DugoutRepPod. That's Dugout REP Pod. While you're at it, follow my personal Twitter feed at AndrewCaruso77. Now, let's continue onward by acknowledging some individuals who have inspired me and have supported me on my podcasting journey. A little bit about myself. I'm currently a sophomore in high school with an aspiration to become a baseball journalist or broadcaster when I'm older, so I see this as a gateway to that goal. Like I said in the intro, this has been months and months in the making. This is the ultimate podcast for everything MLB. I have loved the great game of baseball for as long as I can remember. When I was about 4 or 5, I used to beg my mom to stay up late to watch Yankee games late at night, and I would stay up until my dad came home from work, and then I would have to go to bed. I grew up watching stars on the Yankees like Alex Rodriguez, Derek Jeter, Robinson Cano, Mark Teixeira, Mariano Rivera, and Curtis Granderson, just to name a few. I attended my first baseball game, a minor league game, when I was 5 years old. I attended my first Yankee game a year later as part of a Father's Day gift from my dad and grandpa. It was September 22nd, 2012, Yankees versus Athletics. However, that time I sat in one of the fancy clubs at Yankee Stadium, so it wasn't a real game experience, I guess. My first real game, one with me sitting in the stands, also came at Yankee Stadium on July 26, 2014 against the Toronto Blue Jays. Funny thing is, I still have the sunglasses they gave the kids as a promotional giveaway in my junk drawer. I would say I really started to follow the game when I was 8 or 9. In addition to following all the current players' stats and teams, I love learning about the history of players and teams of the past. I've been to the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York 2 times, and a trip is planned for next summer. I'm an avid baseball card collector, and I got my first baseball card pack when I was 5, and I started to seriously collect when I was 10. My collection is quite massive, featuring rookie cards, cards of Hall of Famers, cards of All-Stars, and more. I love playing the video game MLB The Show on my PlayStation 5 during my spare time. You'll learn more about my favorite team, players, and other favorites about baseball during the social media segment, where I had you sending questions on Twitter for me to answer. This is my first go-around with podcasting, so there may be some hiccups at first, but I will get better, and your feedback on how I can make this show better will be appreciated all the time. Since this is the first episode of the podcast, there are a few people I'd like to acknowledge who were instrumental in helping me get this show up and running. First of all, I'd like to thank my parents for their support in starting this show. It wasn't something I came up with on the fly, as I said earlier. This is something that I've been planning for a few months, and they've been fully supportive of this project, ever since I told them of my intentions a couple of weeks ago. Secondly, I'd like to thank a few individuals, including Mike Scudero, who on Twitter, at Mike Scudero, Gabby Hurlbut on Twitter, at GabbyHurlbut10, and last but certainly not least, Jimmy O'Brien, who you might know as John Boy, on Twitter at John Boy and at John Boy Media. Each of these folks is a host of popular podcasts within the baseball world. Listening to their respective shows and interacting with them on Twitter really inspired me to be just like them and start a baseball show of my own. So, Gabby, Mike, and or John Boy, if you happen to be listening to this show, I want you to know that you played a big part in why the Dugout Report now exists. Each of you deserves tremendous credit, so I thank you for that. Lastly, I'd like to thank you fans for your tremendous support and kind words. When I announced the creation of the show on Twitter, I never expected to receive the type of reaction and reception that I ended up receiving. I'm very humbled by all your support and excited to produce some great content for you, everyone. And I would appreciate it if you shared the show with your friends and family. Now it's time for the information about the show, including episode format, length, and all that jazz. So that's coming up, so stay tuned. Now, you're probably wondering how often new episodes will be released, the length of an episode, and the typical episode format. Well, those questions are about to be answered right now. This isn't a podcast directed towards one specific team like the Yankees, the Padres, the Blue Jays, the Orioles, or like the Guardians. It's a podcast covering all across Major League Baseball and all 30 teams, so episodes could range in length from anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half. It all depends on how much we have to cover. New episodes will be released every Sunday, unless otherwise announced in advance on Twitter. During the regular season, we'll cover the top storyline for the upcoming week, but we'll also cover the top games of the previous week and previous key matchups during the upcoming week. During the off season, like as is right now, we'll cover the top storylines of the previous week, and in addition, we'll do other things such as free agent profiles. Every episode will also have a social media segment. This may include posing a question about something in the game and asking for your thoughts, taking a poll and asking for your thoughts, or there may be some weeks where I give you the floor and the opportunity to ask me questions. Follow the podcast Twitter to never miss out. But since this is a podcast for you, the fans, I want your input. See a story you want me to cover and give my thoughts on? Do you want my thoughts on a trade or signing that happened? Well, you can tweet all those things at my personal handle. Just so you know, all thoughts expressed on this podcast will be my own and not reflective of any other groups or individuals. Now, I think to cap off the episode, we're going to do a social media Q&A. Now, I asked y'all to submit questions for me on Twitter in a post I put up on the show's Twitter page a few days ago. We only have a few questions, and they all come from Twitter user Anthony, at Coach Marino 4HD, who's actually the baseball coach at my high school. He asks, who is your favorite baseball team and why? Who is your favorite baseball team, specific year team and why? Who is your favorite player? And who is your favorite player not on your favorite team? Thanks for the great questions, Coach. Well, if I haven't made it clear already, I'm a Yankees fan. And the anecdote I gave earlier shows how long I've been a Yankees fan. Since I was about 5 years old, and I'm 15, so that's 4 or 5 years old. So that's about 10, 11 years at this point. So, yeah. As for my favorite baseball team, a specific team and why, I would say, the 2016 Cubs are a favorite. The 1998 Yankees, the 2017 Astros, which I know may generate some controversy among the listening community, so I'm prepared for that. Or, even the 2019 Nationals even. What I said, 1998 Yankees, obviously, because they won a bunch of games, like 127 combined in the postseason and regular season, which is just absolutely unheard of these days. And they had great players like Derek Jeter, Scott Brosius, Chuck Knobloch, Tino Martinez, Bernie Williams, and, that really started the championship days. I miss those days, and I'm sure a lot of Yankee fans will. And in fact, the last time they won a world championship, I was 3 years old, 2009. So, I'm hoping they win another championship this year. So, that's wishful thinking, though. 2013 Red Sox, another team that I like, is, how they had a great team as well. David Ortiz, John Lester, David Ross, Koji Uehara, Jacoby Ellsbury, rookie Xander Bogaerts, and Dustin Pedroia, Mike Napoli, and those guys. But, I like that club because they inspired the city of Boston after the Boston Marathon terrorist attacks, and they won the World Series. They had a very successful playoff run that year, with definitely the highlight being, I think, the Ortiz Game 2, correct me if I'm wrong, Game 2 or Game 6 ALCS Grand Slam. I think that just cements the playoff run. 2016 Cubs, another one of my favorites, because of, like I said, they had great stars on that team, and I know like Jose Altuve. They acquired Justin Verlander at the deadline this year. You know, Verlander, George Springer, Alex Bregman, Carlos Correa, Yuli Gurriel. You know, that team had a lot of it. That team had a lot of people. And we know Hurricane Harvey devastated the city of Houston, and I think in both the Red Sox and the Astros scenario, they had a tragedy of some type impact their city, and I think that inspires them to uplift the community who is still recovering from the aftermath of both of those tragedies. So, you know, and that series was a great World Series too against the Dodgers, and it went 7 games, and all series that go 7 games, in my opinion, are the best series, because it comes down to those later, though, even, you know, it always comes down to that last game, who's going to win, who's going to be crowned the champion. Lastly, you know, the 2019 Nationals were another favorite of mine, because you know, you know, they in May of that year they were 19-31, I think, and you know, they didn't look like a playoff team at all. That wasn't a thing. And Dave Martinez, the manager, was at risk of losing his job. You know, I think, you know, but they really tore it up after, you know, from that point on, they really went on a playoff run. You know, I think players like Gerardo Parra, Howie Kendrick, they had Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg, and Ryan Zimmerman. Strasburg and Zimmerman got their first rings in the only organization they had ever known. So, you know, and also a rally cry like Baby Shark and like songs like that, and they really got behind him. So just the way they came back from that deficit, it gave a lot of you know, hope. And this wasn't the last team. The 2016 Chicago Cubs, obvious reasons, they broke the curse of the Billy Goat after 108 years. You know, they came back from 3-1 in the 3-1 deficit in the World Series to win it all. That was the first year I really started to follow the game, and I remember wanting to learn about all the players in the Cubs. I remember following that series pretty intensely. So that was my first real baseball memory. I really think, you know, Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Javier Baez, Dexter Fowler, Wilson Contreras, Lester again, you know, how they came back from the deficit in the World Series, really, I think, like I said, in both the Nationals and the Cubs cases, I think those are definitely worth a documentary in a few years down the line. Yeah, and so the last question we have here is, who is my favorite player, and who is my favorite player not on my favorite team? So I'm gonna modify this question a little bit and tell you who my favorite player is of all time, and who is my favorite player currently. So my favorite player of all time is currently Derek Jeter, and Derek Jeter, he was the first baseball jersey I owned, and you know, I remember when I was 3 years old, I asked my mom, what will Derek Jeter... That was the year I dressed up as Derek Jeter for Halloween. And I asked my mom, what do you think... What is Derek Jeter going to be for Halloween? You know, that was the year they won the World... That was the year they last won the World Series. And like I said previously, I'm hoping they win it again next year after they fell short this year. You know, and when I go to Cooperstown next summer, you know, I'm looking forward. When I go to Cooperstown next summer, I'm hoping to see Jeter's plaque along with Mariano's plaque in the Hall of Fame plaque gallery. You know, I'm sure a lot of Yankee fans feel the same way. And yeah, my favorite player currently not on my favorite team, currently and all time again. Currently and all time, so by all time I mean a player who didn't play for the Yankees. My favorite player currently is Fernando Tatis. I think Shohei Ohtani, and I think a lot of people will agree with me. Shohei Ohtani, Fernando Tatis Jr., especially, they put on historic seasons and they've taken the league by storm, especially Shohei. What he put up this past year was stuff we haven't seen since, Babe Ruth. And he was very much deserving of that MVP award. And looking forward to following his career down the line in the future. So, Fernando Tatis Jr., I think he has a great swag. He's always a great ambassador for the game and brings a lot of personality to the game. And that's what I like the most about baseball and, the different personalities you can see on the field. Former player not on my favorite team, I would say, I've always been, it's hard to choose, but I think I've always been a fan of, Roy Halladay. Roy Halladay, I think he's a criminally underrated pitcher. People don't talk about him enough. He put up great numbers, and he obviously threw the perfect game in the no-hitter, and a perfect game in the playoffs with the Phillies and with the Blue Jays. He won a Cy Young, and what happened to him a few years ago, I think it's been 4 years now. Absolutely tragic. Just very, very tragic to what happened. So, R.I.P. RIP to Roy Halladay. His induction to the Hall of Fame was well worth it. His number of retirements in both Philadelphia and Toronto were also well-deserved. His Hall of Fame induction in Philly was well-deserved too. It's just a shame he wasn't able to witness these kind of moments that a player like him works. Every player in MLB works to accomplish these types of moments throughout their entire career. So, that's something so those are the answers to my question. Once again, thank you, Coach Marino, for those great questions. And now, if you want to submit questions for future Q&A segments on the show, make sure you follow it on Twitter. Keep your eyes peeled. You never know when I might do one of these again. I think we've reached the end of the episode, so it's time for the outro. So, that concludes the end of episode 1 of the Dugout Report. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Once again, as a reminder, you can follow the show on Twitter, @DugoutRepPod, and my personal feed, @AndrewCaruso77. You can find the podcast for now on Apple Podcast, YouTube, and maybe SoundCloud, depending on what I can manage. Please leave a like, review, and comment on each of those platforms, and share this episode with your friends. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next week. So long, everyone.